Welcome to Living on the Edge. My name is Chip Ingram. I want to thank you for joining us. We're in a series called Love, Sex, and Lasting Relationships. Now that may sound a little racy, but we're talking about relationships from God's perspective. And I don't know about you, but one of the big issues in life is how do you know if you're really in love? You know, if you're a parent watching this, I hope your ears are really perking up thinking, boy, I want my kids to figure this out. If you're single, you might be saying, hey, I want to know for sure if I'm really in love, or is this just kind of ooey gooey feelings, infatuation? And if you're married, you might say to yourself, you know what, do I really love my mate? Where did the spark go? We're going to address all those issues. In fact, in our last session, we were starting a test. We went through the first 4 tests of whether you have these chemical, ooey-gooey feelings that God made us with that are wonderful, that make us attracted to the opposite sex, or whether you have genuine, God-given love that sustains a relationship. If you have a pencil, a pen, get it out, because I'm going to go through the next 8 tests of how you can know in your relationship whether you're really in love or whether it's just infatuation. It's a lot of fun. I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's join the teaching right now.
How do you think people tell the difference between love and infatuation?
Some people don't. Some people can't.
You know, infatuation, everything is okay. In reality, you accept someone for, I hate things that he does sometimes, and I don't agree with him for doing this, and he hates when I do that, but it doesn't matter, and we'll be fine.
How did you know it wasn't infatuation?
I don't even know what that means, really.
It's very excited and butterflies to be around that person, but love is more like I want to share things in my life with that person, things that I do. I want them to be a part of it.
When you're infatuated, it's more of a lust, I think. And you think you love, and then when you really get love, you realize that what you thought was love was infatuation.
Have you ever been in that position before?
Yes, all my life.
Do you know the difference between love and infatuation?
No, I don't know. I'll tell you when I'm in love.
Test number 5 is security. An individual in love tends to have a sense of security and feeling of trust after considering everything involved in the relationship with the other person. An infatuated individual tends to have a blind sense of security based upon wishful thinking rather than upon careful consideration. Or he or she may have a sense of insecurity that is sometimes expressed as jealousy. If you're possessive, if you're jealous, if the other person always has to know where you are, if you're uptight every time they're talking with a member of the opposite sex, good sign it's infatuation, not love. L or I, mark it down. Test number 6 is work. An individual in love works for the other person or for their mutual benefit. He or she may study to make the other person proud of him. The ambition of that person is spurred on and he plans to save or work for the future. He may daydream, but the dreams are reasonably attainable. Man, when you love someone, you say, you know what, this is what we need to do later. Let's bust it. Let's hang in there. I can get through school this way, or we're going to save up our money, or you go on for that degree, and that's a work. And you work for one another when you love and you're committed. However, an infatuated person loses his ambition, his appetite, his interest, his everyday affairs. He thinks of his own misery. He often daydreams, but his dreams are sometimes not limited to the attainable, and they're just given free rein. At times, this person's dreams become substitutes for reality, and the individual starts to live in a world of dreams. I have a good friend. I like him. Young man's been in my house a lot, and he fell into infatuation. He thought it was love with a girl in Phoenix. And he started buying $100, $200, and $300 gifts. And then Phoenix is a long drive from Santa Cruz. Even going way too fast, it's 11 or 12 hours. And he would call her on the phone, had $400 and $500 phone bills, and then impromptu would call in, I can't come to work, get in his car, drive 11 or 12 hours, and surprise her unannounced and bring roses to her work, and give her an expensive gift, get in the car, drive 11 hours back. That is what we call insanity. When it's daydreamy and over the top, rest assured it's infatuation, it's not love. 7 is problem solving. A couple in love, they face problems frankly, and they attempt to solve the problems. If there are barriers to them getting married, these barriers are approached intelligently and removed. And the ones that can't be removed, they may be circumvented but with the knowledge that it's being done deliberately. Infatuation problems tend to be disregarded or glossed over. In your relationship, how do you deal with problems? And here's the classic line. Here's how you know you're really infatuated. You're in a relationship, you think it's to get more serious. This is the one. I think it's her. I think it's him. And your mother or brother or closest friend or spiritual mentor raises a few minor problems like, you do understand he's 25 years older than you. Or, I know he's had 4 divorces and there's a lot of potential, but... or how about this one? You're broke and he's broke and no common vision. You don't know him. No common commitment. Oh, I love this one. I don't know if he's a Christian, but he says he believes in God. And then here's what it is. I understand all the reasons why it won't work, but we're in love. Right? It's called denial. People who are in love face problems, and the ones they can't lick, they say, you know something? We're going to set this over here, but we know we're setting it over there, and we got to work through it. When you're infatuated, just gloss it over. I or L, what would you put for your relationship? Number 8 is distance. Love tends to be constant. Infatuation often varies with the distance between the couple. I remember one of the greatest things that happened in my relationship with Teresa is, we were at a real critical juncture, and I ended up going on a ministry trip for 6 weeks to the Philippines. Played a game or 2 in the morning, 1 at night, did clinics, and I had from about, 11 o'clock in the afternoon until 2 or 3. And I was away from her. I couldn't get a message if I wanted to. It was right during that window of time where he'd walk through the process. Is she the right one? I didn't know. And then I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And what happened was I was more in love after 6 weeks being apart from her than I was when I left. And that told me it wasn't just, emotions. It wasn't just chemicals. It was about something God was doing in my heart. I watched my son court a girl and go through a relationship recently and was married not this December, but last December. But the entire year before that, she was with Campus Crusade in Sweden. And I watched him email, talk, write, and I watched their love. I remember saying, Ryan, hey, Ryan, how's it going? He made 1 trip to Sweden. It's all you can afford, no matter how much in love you are. And he said, Dad, you know something? I hate being this far away. But, we have talked about things in letters and dealt with issues a long distance I'm not sure we would have dealt with if we could go out for coffee and have so much fun. The distance has made us closer. How about you and your relationship? What's distance do to it? If it strengthens it, probably love. If pretty soon your eyes are wandering and you're looking other places, probably infatuation. Number 9 is physical attraction and involvement. This is a hot test. Physical attraction is a relatively smaller part of the total relationship when a couple's in love, and it's a relatively greater part when they're infatuated. When a couple is in love, any physical contact they have tends to have meaning as well as being pleasurable experience in and of itself. It tends to express what they feel. In other words, their commitment, their concern that's real for one another. Infatuation, however, physical contact tends to be an end in itself. It represents only pleasurable experience devoid of meaning. Now, this is where, our culture has just brainwashed us. So that, the first night people were sleeping together. Or immediately, early on in the relationship, it gets physical. The moment your physical involvement moves beyond your leading from God, you cloud your ability to hear God's voice in the relationship. When it's infatuation, it is driven by the physical and the making out and the fondling and all the things that are physical. When it is love, there is restraint and respect. And when you decide you hold hands, it means because the relationship goes from casual to the next level, and there's a commitment there. And when you decide to move from holding hands to kissing one another in an appropriate way, it says, you know what, we're becoming a real item. And when you move from there, each step of the relational bonding process is communicating a deeper and deeper commitment to one another. However, in infatuation, it goes just the opposite. In fact, it leads right into number 10, affection. In love, an expression of affection tends to come relatively late. See, if you really want to get to know the person, it's not that it's bad, it's great. But if you want to not think just with your emotions and your hormones, but with your mind, you slow it up and you let the affection come later on in the relationship. In infatuation, it may come earlier, sometimes from the very beginning. Let me give you a passage to jot down, 2 Samuel 13. It's the story of Tamar and one of David's sons, Ammon. And here's a man who doesn't really love, but he lusts. And he takes Tamar. And there's a classic passage at the end. Afterwards, because he wouldn't follow God's design, because she said, hey, you know what, my dad will give me. You know what, just ask Dad. We can be married. Let's do this right. And instead he rapes her. And then a very interesting little line in Scripture. It says, therefore after that, he hated Tamar with the same intensity of the love which he had for her formerly. If there is a way to absolutely hijack relationships from God's will, it's get physicality and affection before your commitment and your genuine emotion and your real love for one another. How about you? Where are you at on this one? I or L? Number 11 is stability. Love tends to endure. Infatuation may change suddenly, unpredictably. I mean, I don't know about you, but the entertainment tonight where they kind of bring us up on the stars? I can only take a small dose of that. But now and then, I love it when they'll show the picture of a Cameron Diaz or a Julia Roberts or a J-Lo or whoever happens to be, sort of the hot item right now. And then they'll say, well, this is where her journey is. Let's back up. 2 years ago, she was with so-and-so. Then she's with so-and-so. Now she's with so-and-so. Now she's with so-and-so. And if it's J-Lo and Ben, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, no, yes. And you know what? Hear my heart. I remember reading an article where Julia Roberts was giving an interview, and she said, you know something? I guess the part I like about a relationship is falling in love. But after that, I'm not sure exactly what happens, but it doesn't work very well for me after that. And if you look at her life, here's a beautiful gal, seems to have a really great personality, and she thinks infatuation and love are the same thing. So she gets in a 6-week to 18-month infatuation, and when it wears off, she finds another partner, and when it wears off, she finds another partner, and when it wears off, she finds another partner, and she is now our model. And the Britneys follow in her stead. And you know what? I think it breaks God's heart. I don't have any criticism. I don't have a down on stars. I think they're the most miserable people on the face of the earth. They have what everyone we're told we want: fame, good looks, money, and availability to do anything. And what I see is they can't do the most basic thing in life meaningfully. They can't have a decent relationship. And I don't know about you, I wouldn't trade places with them for all the money in all the world. And I want you to know that God wants you to be more wealthy than all of them in the things that count. And you do that by understanding what real love is. It's not just eros. It is eros, phileo, and agape. And he also teaches you that by ruthlessly going through the test and saying, is it I, infatuation, or is it L, real love? And there's some of you sitting in here tonight that, you know what, you're sitting next to that boyfriend or girlfriend, and so far it is I, a little bit of L, I. And what you know is, you're not in love. And you've been through this routine, and you've been through this cycle, and what you need to do is stop. And what you need to do probably in many cases is break it off. And what you need to do in all cases where it's got physical is stop. And you need to back up. And you need to say, you know something, I don't know if God's in this or not, but we got to do it right. I mean, have you done this before or not? What happened last time? This whole series is about love, sex, and a lasting relationship. It's all about God saying to you, He wants to help you. He doesn't want you to go through the pain. You don't have to be divorced. You don't have to go through a cycle of various partners. He really has a special, wonderful, tremendous plan, but we haven't read the directions. How about you? How about you? What would God say to you this night about doing relationships His way? I or L when it comes to stability. And then test number 12 is delayed gratification. A couple in love is not indifferent to the effects of postponement, whether it be their wedding or a major event. They don't prolong that period unless they find it wiser to wait. They don't feel an almost irresistible drive toward haste. By contrast, infatuated couples tend to feel an urge toward getting married. Postponement is intolerable to them, and they interpret it as a deprivation rather than a preparation. And, is that not the case? When you love another person, you can wait. You're not driven by hormones or chemicals or feelings. Remember Jacob and Rachel? He waited 7 years. And the scripture says it was like a day. Why? He loved her. He loved her. He cherished her. He loved her. Now, how do you know if you're in love? Number one, know what real love is, definitionally. Number two, the difference between love and infatuation. Turn the page with me. I want to talk about how to develop your love life as we close. How do you develop your love life? And I put a picture on that I want you to look at carefully. It's an equilateral triangle, and the middle of it is love. And on the bottom is agape love. And that's the idea of being brother and sister in Christ. That's loving one another radically. That's giving the other person what they need the most when they deserve it the least. That's cherishing and protecting. That's being pure because you don't want to do anything to damage them. That's not wanting any part of your cardboard to get mixed up with someone else's cardboard when you come glued together in physical union until it's the right person at the right time, because it's to bond you together for life. On the right side, then, we have phileo love. That's being best friends. That's time and walks and communication and sharing hearts. And then you have erotic love, and that's being lovers and nourishing and enjoying in the marriage relationship what God longs for you to have. But here's what I want you to see. All three need to go together. All three need to be nourished. And so I have a word for singles, and I have a word for the marrieds. The word to singles is this: keep your emotional and physical involvement behind your leading from God and commitment to the other person. Those are the key words. Keep your emotional and physical involvement behind your leading from God and commitment to the other person. Single people, please, hear your father. I love you, he says. Keep your physical and emotional involvement behind your walk and leading from him. For married people, love requires the nourishment of all three kinds of love. Are you ready for this? Examine which one your mate needs most and choose to give it as an act of worship to God. Now, I'm not going to have you do this out loud, but ladies, let me ask you a hypothetical question that I'll ask the men. If I took this pen and I gave it to your husband, and we were sitting together, the three of us, and that equilateral triangle was there. And on the right side, we have the best friends kind of love. And on the left side, we have the erotic, sexual, sensual love. And on the bottom is the agape love that nourishes both. And I said to your husband, I want you to take this pen, and I want you to go ahead and take that cap off. And I would like you to put either a big check mark over here on the companionship kind of love or the erotic kind of love. Which one of these would you like to be more a part of your relationship? What do you think he would say, ladies? I mean, is there any idea? I mean, just a foggy notion which direction he might go. Well, we've had fun with you, ladies. Men, now I give this pen to your wife. Which one do you think she would check? Over 20 years as a pastor, I'll tell you what, hundreds and hundreds of people, starving women saying, you know something? I understand. God created sex. But when someone doesn't look you in the eye, when someone doesn't help out with the dishes, when someone doesn't help out around the house, when someone doesn't open their heart and share what's going on in their thinking, when someone doesn't bring you into their world, 10 o'clock at night makes sex feel a lot like I'm getting used. And you know what? I don't like it. And it's become distasteful and boring. See, what you need to understand is that these things are not in isolation. And here's what happens in marriages, and it's tragic. The average guy over time says, I'll tell you what, and no one says this out loud, so I'll just say it. I hang out with a lot of guys. No one says this out loud. I'll tell you what, when my wife starts getting more affectionate over on this side, I'll start fixing stuff around the house. But my lands, we've been married, and man, she seemed to really like me before we got married in the first year or two, and man, it's just nothing now. And the average woman goes to a Bible study and then gets coffee with that best friend afterwards and says, You know what? I am so alone, and I am so desperate, and I am just so distraught. You know, he wants the physical side, and I feel like I got all these kids and all the responsibility. I write out all the bills, and man, I feel like I got all my kids in him, kid number 5. I want a man. I want a man who'll lead. I want a man who'll lead us in prayer. I want a man who'll talk to me. I want a man who'll be a grown-up and act like a man. And when he does that, tell you what, then I think I'll open up in the bedroom. And my word to both of you is this. Go down to the bottom where it says agape love. Agape love is giving the other person what they need the most, what communicates their love language when they deserve it the least. And men, regardless of how your wife may or may not respond, as an act of worship, ask God for supernatural grace, and you start giving her phileo love. And ladies, I would challenge you, not asking for some quick fix and if I do this, no. Agape love is you give with no thought of return. And you do it, you don't even do it for your mate, you do it as an act of worship. And if you will change in that one fundamental way, God will change your relationship. I mean, he will change your relationship. Everyone's waiting for the first person to move. You start giving your husband, you start giving your wife what communicates love to them, not because they deserve it, not if they or because they, but you do it because you have been given it by God, and you begin to give it that way. And I'm telling you, love never fails. It's patient, it's kind, it doesn't bring up the past, it's considerate, it's not rude, it doesn't brag, it's other-centered. It's the kind of love God loves you with. See, love is a choice. I want to close with a little story I found, I think it was in Guideposts or somewhere, but it's a stockbroker, and he sounds like he somewhere along the line caught the spirit of what we wanted to learn tonight. And listen to this, it's great. He said, I made a vow to myself on the drive to our vacation beach cottage. For 2 weeks, I would try to be a loving husband and father. Totally loving. No ifs, no buts. The idea came to me as I was listening to a tape, as a man was quoting a biblical passage about husbands being thoughtful of their wives. And then he went on to say that love is an act of the will. A person can choose to love. To myself, I had to admit that I'd been a selfish husband and that love had been dulled by my own insensitivity. He said, in petty ways, really, I chided my wife because of her tardiness. She was always late. It made me mad. I would decide that the TV needed to be on my channel because that was most important. I would throw away a day-old paper even though I knew she wanted to read it, but I hated it lying around the house. Well, for 2 weeks, all that would change. And he went on a little experiment. And I did it. Right from the moment, I kissed Evelyn at the door and said, that new yellow sweater looks great on you. And she said, oh, Tom, you noticed. She was surprised and pleased and maybe a little perplexed. After the long drive, I wanted to sit and read, and she said, you want to take a walk on the beach? I started to refuse, but then I thought, she's been alone with the kids all week, and now she wants to be alone with me. So I made a choice. I didn't want to. I didn't feel like it. We walked on the beach while the kids flew the kites. So it went on for 2 weeks. I did not call my Wall Street investment firm, of which I'm a director, a single time. In fact, we even went to the Shell Museum, and I hate museums, but I kind of lightened up and I actually enjoyed it. Well, I was relaxed, I was happy, the whole vacation. I just made a choice, I would love her. It was a choice, not a feeling. There was one thing, however, that went wrong with my experiment. My wife and I still laugh about it. On the last night at the cottage preparing for bed, my wife stared at me with the saddest expression. What's the matter, I asked. She said, Tom, in a voice filled with distress, do you know something that I don't know? What do you mean, I said. Well, that checkup I had several weeks ago at the doctor, did he tell you something about me? Tom, you've been so good to me. Am I dying? I love that. It took a moment, and I burst out laughing. I said, honey, and I wrapped my arms around her and said, no, honey, you're not dying. I'm just beginning to live. You want that kind of relationship? Huh? You can have it. You can have it. Make a choice. Ask and answer question number 1. Am I in love or is it infatuation? And then move where you need to move to get right. And second, define what is real love. Based on God's love, agape love, supernatural love. Best friends, lovers. Right way at the right time.
Well, I hope you've had as much fun listening and enjoying about whether your relationship is love or infatuation as I've had in teaching it. But I want to give a very specific application. Are you ready? If you're single and you're in a relationship, you know that you're an item, you're dating someone. I want you to go to the website, lote.org, download these notes for free, and then go through all 12 and put either an I, infatuated, or an L, love. And then, if you have mostly I's, you may want to get with a person of the same sex, a good friend, and say, gosh, I thought I was in love, but I guess it's just about feelings. Or it's about balance. Sit down with that person you're dating, find a good place, get a cup of coffee, and just do a real inventory on your relationship. And just say, Lord, give us direction. If you're married, here's what I want you to do. It sounds bizarre, but it kind of ties into that story. If you're married, I want you to pretend that 7 days from right now, look at the clock, 7 days from right now, your mate's going to die. And you want to make the next 7 days the most awesome, best days in her life or his life. Whatever that means, whatever you did when you courted him, whether it's a call or flowers or a date or, cleaning the car. I don't know what I love you means to your mate, but you do. Do it radically, something each day for the next 7 days. And then drop me an email and let me know how that impacted your relationship. It's been a great time in this series together. In our next session, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to look at love and sex and why knowing the difference between the two makes all the difference in the world. See you next week.